Hi, my name is Alex, and I'm a public education economist and economics teacher at the Reserve Bank of Australia. In this video, I'm going to give a brief summary of current economic conditions and an overview of the bank's recent monetary policy decisions as at August 2023. This information is drawn from the Reserve Bank's August Statement on Monetary Policy, and it's aimed toward high school economics students. Let's start by looking at Australia's economic growth. In this graph, the black line plots quarterly GDP growth. This line shows the significant slowing in Australia's GDP growth since mid-2022. The coloured bars show the contributions from the different categories of spending in the economy. In this video, we're going to focus on consumption, spending on goods and services by households. Consumption is an important driver of economic growth in Australia because it makes up over 50% of the overall value of GDP. Though its contribution to quarterly changes varies with time, consumption's contribution to quarterly GDP growth, given by the size of the yellow bars, has declined substantially since mid-2022. This has in turn contributed to slower economic growth. Have a look at this chart. The red bar represents the contribution to consumption growth from household spending on essentials like groceries. The blue bars represent the contribution from discretionary spending. That is, money spent on non-essential items such as luxury handbags. Focus on this area of the graph. We can see that consumption growth for discretionary items has weakened, so people are still spending on essentials but cutting back on other purchases. So why has consumption growth slowed? Some important factors at play have been cost of living pressures, higher interest rates which have led to higher interest payments on loans among households who have borrowed money, and previous declines in wealth. All of this has reduced people's disposable income. And less disposable income means households have less money to spend or save, all else being equal. GDP growth is forecast to remain subdued over the rest of 2023, as cost of living pressures and the rise in interest rates continue to weigh on domestic demand. Economic activity influences many other areas of the economy, including employers' demand for workers, and the extent to which individuals are willing and able to find work. Australia's labour market was tight during the first half of 2023, although there are signs of it becoming less tight than it was late in 2022. When we say labour market conditions are tight, this means that the demand for workers by employers is strong relative to the number of available workers. In other words, there is not much spare capacity or underused labour resources in the economy. We can see this in Australia's unemployment rate, the blue line. This captures people who are not currently employed but are actively seeking work. The unemployment rate has been near its 50-year low of 3.5% over the past year. The underemployment rate, the purple line, represents people who are currently employed but wish to work more hours. It has increased a little in recent months, though it is still near its lowest level in several decades. Strong population growth has increased the supply of labour, as overseas arrivals have risen to around pre-pandemic levels, and fewer people than usual have left Australia. Population growth also adds to aggregate demand in the economy. This has supported an increase in employment over the first half of 2023. But there are signs the labour market is not as tight as it was in late 2022. We can see this in a range of indicators of labour demand. For instance, there has been a moderation in job vacancies since mid-2022. The bank forecasts that the unemployment rate will gradually increase in the coming years as a result of the slowing in economic growth, but it will still be lower than it was prior to the pandemic. Wages growth is expected to strengthen in the second half of the year before declining gradually over the next 2 years as spare capacity in the labour market increases and inflation declines. Labour costs like wages, along with other factors, can influence inflation, which I'll now focus on. Let's start with headline inflation. This tracks the increase in the price of consumer goods and services in the economy. You can see that headline inflation, the red line, declined to 6% in year-ended terms in the June quarter. It has passed its peak of almost 8% in late 2022, but remains high. We also track underlying inflation, which removes the effect of irregular or temporary price changes. Annual trimmed mean inflation, in blue, one measure of underlying inflation that the bank monitors, fell to 5.9% in the June quarter, down from a peak of almost 7% late last year. But inflation remains high and is broadly based, meaning that prices are high across a wide range of items purchased by households. Now let's turn to how prices for goods and services have evolved. Goods price inflation, the purple line, slowed further in the June quarter from its peak late last year. The slowing in goods price inflation is because improved functioning of supply chains has reduced global cost pressures, which have then been passed through to domestic prices. The slowing in domestic economic activity is also having an effect on inflation. In particular, consumers are limiting their discretionary spending due to cost of living pressures. On the other hand, services price inflation, the orange line, remained strong in the June quarter. This reflected higher input costs for workers, materials and transport, and strong demand for services. We are seeing similar trends in other advanced economies like the US and Europe, where inflation has fallen further from its peaks, but services inflation remains persistent. Let's finish up by looking at monetary policy. The RBA board has increased the cash rate target considerably since May 2022. This can be seen by the red line. The board has done this to help ensure inflation returns to its 2 to 3% target range within a reasonable time frame. In July and August 2023, the board kept the cash rate unchanged to provide time to assess the impact of the cash rate increases to date, as well as the outlooks for inflation and the economy. Some further tightening of monetary policy, meaning further increases in the cash rate, may be required to ensure inflation returns to target in a reasonable time frame. But that will depend on what upcoming releases of data reveal about economic conditions and the board's evolving assessment of risks. Thanks for watching this video. For further reading, have a look at the video description. You can find links to the full statement on monetary policy and other relevant information. And visit our education page, link in the description, for more student-focused resources.